Well, let's look into our theme of the day. And there are times when we inadvertently communicate something entirely wrong, way off the mark. And a number of years ago, when our kids were still home, sometimes I'd come home from work or from a long day, and I'd just plot myself and say, I'm just wasted. And eventually, my kids, I guess they talked to them. And then one day they looked at me and said, Dad, you can't come home and say you're wasted. Why? Because it doesn't mean what you think it means. Oh, okay. So then I tried a different phrase. I came home after a full day and I said, I'm baked. And they said, Dad, you can't use that one either because that doesn't mean what you think it means. Well, what? Well, can I say I'm whacked out? No, you can't say that either. Now, you need to know something. All those words mean exhausted. All those words mean fatigued. But I couldn't use those words because apparently they've changed meaning. And somehow, I have a diminished energy level at this present moment. Somehow just doesn't grab the same way. But I need some correction in terms of language. What are you communicating? What am I communicating? Is it clear? Is it true? Is it helpful? Is it perhaps even hurtful sometimes? Now let me show you some miscommunications. Brooke Shields, during an interview to become a spokesman for a federal anti-smoking campaign. Listen to what she said. Smoking kills. If you're killed, you've lost a very important part of your life. Winston Bennett, University of Kentucky basketball forward, after surgery says, I've never had major knee surgery on any other part of my body. Marion Barry, when he was mayor of Washington, D.C., said, outside of the killings, Washington has one of the lowest crimes in the country. I shouldn't be laughing at that, but just wow. Then Philadelphia Phillies manager Danny Ozark said, half this game is 90% mental. George Bush, it's no exaggeration to say that the undecideds could go one way or the other. Lee Iacocca brilliantly quipped one time, we've got to pause and ask ourselves, how much clean air do we really need? Joe Theismann, look at this. The term genius is inapplicable to anyone in this game. A genius is Norman Einstein. And I like this last one. A Miss USA contestant from Alabama was asked, if you could live forever, would you and why? And some of you perhaps have seen this, but I would not live forever because we should not live forever, because if we were supposed to live forever, then we would live forever. But we cannot live forever, which is why I would not live forever. Well, I'm making a point with this, truly. It's good to laugh, but what are you communicating? Is it clear? Is it helpful? Is it true? Is it perhaps even hurtful? And our vision is to inspire you to equip the church and engage the world. And we can resource you with all kinds of knowledge and skills to engage the world. But as we enter into those contexts of equipping the church, but particularly engaging the world, we're going to find all kinds of cultural landmines and Scud missiles. Because we have a PR crisis. The organized church, and to almost just as great a deal, Christianity itself, is perceived with very cynical eyes today. We are not viewed in a positive light. We are not even viewed in a neutral light. We are not even viewed as irrelevant or extraneous. We are increasingly viewed as something hostile, or to be hostily viewed, or as a mockery. In 2007, David Kinnaman wrote a book called Unchristian. Many of you interacted with it. Based on the results of research inspired by a project that Gabe Lyons was engaged in, helping a new generation of leaders understand the perceptions that people have of the church and of Christianity today. And the results of these primarily came from outsiders, people who are unchurched, disconnected with the church, and it was based on their experiences. And Kinnaman then digested these and put them in book form, and he acknowledged and identified a number of points that were particularly seen as hypocritical, insincere, anti-homosexual, sheltered, boring, old-fashioned, unintelligent, too involved in politics, and too judgmental. Now, while this research is largely American, There's a lot of crossover. And in the Canadian context, our public relations image is just as challenging. What are we communicating? Is it clear? Is it true? Is it helpful? Is it perhaps even hurtful? And where we've been unclear, we need to be clear with the highest megapixel quality we can possibly achieve. And where we've been misrepresented, and there are times we have been misrepresented. It's been false, but this is how we've been represented. This is how we've been characterized. Where that's happened, we've got to do everything we can to change that image and to find creative ways in which we can reflect to people the beauty of the gospel. And where we have messed up, we need to simply apologize and make it right. And so today, I want to launch a 3-week series that addresses some of the PR issues that we have. And this will be a bit more thematic than it will be expository. And I know we're in it right now. It's November, the intensity's on, but I just want to keep us connected with the world in which we're situated and remind ourselves of our larger mission as we function as Great Commission disciples in our world, and as we prepare to be more effective and competent and resourced to be Great Commission disciples in the world that God has placed us. And so, we've been accused of being insincere, because sometimes we have been insincere. We've been accused of sometimes being harsh and judgmental, because we have been harsh and judgmental. And there are times when we've been accused of being indifferent, because sometimes we have been indifferent. So let's talk a little bit about insincerity. At times we've been insincere because, really at the heart, there was an absence of sufficient, significant Christian love. And there are times when we've sought to communicate care verbally, but our actions betrayed us. And there are times when our messaging actually hurt us. Kinnaman quotes Sean, a young man aged 22, who states, "Christians are too concerned with converting people. They are insincere. All I ever hear is get saved. I tried the whole Jesus thing already, and it didn't work for me, and I'm not interested now." And somehow there are times when, as a church at large, and you may say, "I've never done this," but as a church at large, we've communicated this incredible focus on our relationship with God and getting saved, which is fundamentally what the gospel is about. But we sometimes have not communicated that we care about the totality of the whole person. And we actually have hurt ourselves by not displaying a sufficient care and concern that really we should feel and that we should sense. We've all been in situations where we've been in an interaction with somebody who's has a position of prominence, maybe a politician, maybe a leader, maybe an executive. And we've been in those situations where they're shaking our hand, and it's as if they're looking right through us. Or perhaps even more overt, they're looking over our shoulder at the next person they want to speak with. Had those situations? And they're engaging us with some sort of conversation that shows like they're interested, but we know that a real sincere interest, it's just not there. And our lack of sincerity, our insincerity, can hurt us deeply. Not because of the words we said, but because of the surrounding things that we did not say, or more importantly, do. So we're in a room of 30 people. Some of us are going to look through that room of 30 people, and we're going to try to find somebody that we know, and then we'll come alongside of them and we'll engage them in conversation. Because it's safe. And we're too intimidated or afraid to be friendly. Some of us are wired a little bit differently. If there's 30 people in the room, we're going to work the room. Frankly, this tends to be I'm going to work the room and try to meet everybody, touch everybody, and shake hands and engage everybody just a little bit because I want to kind of create a mood in the room. And then others of you are kind of like my wife in what she does, and she's such a testimony to me, because what she does in a room of 30 people, she'll find one person, and she'll talk to that person, and she'll look that person in the eyes. Am I creeping you out right now? and she'll ask about their life and their family and their kids. And she cares, and the sincerity is just overwhelming. And then when she sees that person 2 weeks later, she'll remember those names. I might remember they had kids, but she will remember their names. And that communicates care and sincerity. Jesus showed care towards us, and he showed care not only in the words that he said, but in the way he engaged people through his countenance and through his actions. Let me take you to just a real quick story. Let me just read to you from Mark chapter 1, verse 40. And a leper came to him, to Jesus, imploring him and kneeling, and said to him, if you will, you can make me clean. If you want to, you can do this for me. Moved with pity, and some of your translations say compassion, but really that's a more appropriate word, pity. He was moved with pity, deep pity. And he stretched out his hand, and he touched him. And he said to him, I will be clean. And immediately the leprosy left him, and he was made clean. And so leprosy, we know what leprosy was. It was a horrible disease that affected your appearance, it affected your health, it affected your appendages, and of course, symbolically you were declared unclean, and so you were ostracized socially from your family and from social contact. You were certainly ostracized and isolated from the worshiping community, and the last thing you would do with a leper is to touch them. And here Jesus, he sees, feels compassion, and his heart, his will, is reached out, and he touches the man. And he didn't know. We're not indicated that he did this because he was a Jew. We don't know if he was a Gentile. We don't know if he once was from an elite home, once was a leader. We don't know anything. It's just that Jesus cared for this leper. And he showed his care and compassion and pity with great sincerity because he loved. Sometimes we've been insincere because we did not love. Sometimes we've been harsh and judgmental because we didn't love. Now, here's what's so hard in this one. As Christians, we care about the truth. If you ever hear me saying anything that suggests a lower view of truth, you're misunderstanding, you're mishearing me. Truth matters. But sometimes we've cared more about truth, and I'm speaking very broadly here about the church, but sometimes we've cared more about the truth than we did about love. Listen, these are inseparable. The scriptures tell us that God is love, and what did Jesus say? I am the truth. I am the very embodiment of truth, objective, out-of-body reality, not relative to anything else. God is love, and God is true. And the scriptures talk about how we hold these two concepts and these ideas together. They're inseparable and both deeply meaningful and critical to the core of our faith. But perhaps the most critical social issue of the day, whereby we, and I'm speaking broadly here, are viewed as harsh and judgmental, relates to the whole matter and theme of LGBTQ. And Kinnaman tells us, and we know this, that Christians as a whole view gays and lesbians with contempt and not with love. Now, Pause. We do believe in biblical marriage. We do believe in monogamous, heterosexual, permanent marriage. In fact, next semester, we're going to do a 3-week series on the case for marriage, the case for celibacy, and the case for our sexuality. And we also know from the scriptures that sexual sins have consequences, whether it's premarital or extramarital, or whether it's uncontrolled lust, or whether it's sexual abuse. There are all kinds of implications that spill out of our lives when we depart from the ideal. But too often we thought that we need to be harsh with truth rather than loving with truth. You know what impacts me when I read the Gospels? Who was Jesus harsh with? You know, those who should have known better, namely the Pharisees. But when Jesus encountered broken people, when Jesus encountered lost people, he did so not with any sense of compromise of truth, but it was absolutely clear that he loved them. And somehow, truth needs to confront our categories. Truth needs to confront our mental models. Moral truth needs to confront our lifestyle and rattle us and shake us and cause us to bend the knee and to confess and repent. But truth doesn't have to be delivered caustically and harshly. Truth will do its work. But we also need to lead with love. On this particular theme, some of you are here with same-sex struggles, and you're afraid to talk about it. And I'm so grateful for our chaplain, our dean of students, Dan Gabor, and his team, student development team, who are so concerned for you. And we want this to be a safe place to have hard conversations. And we know that the church at large and as a whole is struggling with how to have this conversation, because there's this whole tension. We want to be true to biblical truth, and yet we want to have conversations that are bathed and dripping in love. And we're going to try and walk that. But let's correct this image and this reputation without compromising truth on any issue, but let's lead with love. That's lifestyle. What about ideology? Well, how can we not hear the news about Paris and about ISIS or Hezbollah or Al-Qaeda or whatever it may be? And how can we not let these powerful forces shake our perceptions of people and certain ideologies? Listen, there are evil ideologies out there. There are evil philosophical and political frameworks out there. But every Muslim needs Christ just as much as you and I need Christ. And so while we may have strong ideas about ideology and about faith systems, the individuals need to be object of our love and our compassion. And so we've got to change the perception that we're always harsh and judgmental. We need to lead with love. I really like how Eugene Peterson translates Ephesians chapter 4. Listen how I usually like to read Eugene Peterson when I'm reading large passages, but listen to, it's just a fresh way of saying this. No prolonged infancies among us, please. We'll not tolerate babes in the woods, small children who are easy marks for imposters. God wants us to grow up, to know the whole truth and tell it in love. To know the whole truth and tell it in love. Like Christ in everything, who was our perfect model. We take our lead from Christ, who is the source of everything we do. He keeps us in step with each other. His very breath and blood flow through us, nourishing us so that we will grow up healthy in God, robust in love. And so where we've been insincere, been so because of lack of love, let's Let's farm that and fan the flames of love. And where we've been harsh and judgmental, let's replace that with love. Not a compromise of truth, but let's bathe it and surround it and couch it and envelop it in love. And then there are times when we've been indifferent because we did not love. And whether it's world genocide or genocide in the world, or whether it's slaughters or sex trafficking or poverty or injustice, or the treatment of Kurds in Turkey, or a crisis in an Aboriginal community in northern Saskatchewan, or whether it's a bullying episode on a school playground in Moose Jaw. When we hear of that and when we see that, and I know there's such a thing as compassion fatigue, but we got to fight that. And when we hear of those kinds of things, it should do something inside of us. Again, I take you to the modeling of Jesus. I love what is said about Jesus' spirit and emotions in Matthew chapter 9, verse 35, where it says, "And Jesus went throughout all the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues and proclaiming the gospel of the kingdom and healing every disease and every affliction. And when he saw the crowds, he had compassion for them." We might talk about our hearts breaking, but here it's his bowels ached, his gut wrenched. He had compassion because they were harassed and helpless. And the image here is they were being hunted down like sheep without a shepherd. And then he said to the disciples, "The harvest is plentiful, workers are few. Therefore, let's pray earnestly for the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into his harvest." This was the heart of Jesus for lost people. He was not indifferent even to the amount of pain that he saw, because he just didn't see crowds, he saw individuals. And where we've allowed ourselves to grow indifferent, we need to fan the flames of love. There are times we've been insincere. At times we've been harsh and judgmental. There are times we've even been uncaring in our indifference. The answer is always love. Now, I'm having us think beyond and changing the reputation that we have in our cultural context by leading with love, because love will build the platform for our ministry. Love will build the platform for our message. But if we're going to love out there, you know where I'm going. We first must love here. What did Jesus say? "New commandment I give to you, that you love one another. Just as I have loved you, you are also to love one another by this act, not by this emotion, but by this demonstration. All people will know that you are my disciples if you have love for one another." And so before we leave, just look around. I'm not trying to be creepy here, but just look around. Love each other. And if you caught a faculty member, a staff person, we're included. Let's love. Let's become loving people here so the world will know that our message has a power of transformation in a reconciled relationship with God. And if ever you think love isn't working, increase the dosage.